Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down this 10-game NBA slate here on DraftKings, talking through a game-by-game breakdown, as well as my favorite early little core plays. Make sure to check out my Prize Picks video after this, because we've gone back-to-back clean 2-0 sweeps. That's right, 6-0 in the Prize Pick in the past three Prize Pick videos, so we are killing it over there. So make sure to check out that video after this. Hit that like button and subscribe. Do appreciate all your guys' support. And now let's break down this 10-game slate. So just by early look for this slate, it's going to be chaotic. There's injury news pretty much for like every team. As you can see here, Embiid, Lillard, Davis, Kyrie, Harden, Halliburton, Laurie's out. We had DeRozan questionable. Beal's out. Rozier, Keldon Johnson, Middleton, Kuzma, Clarkson, Aiton, Grant, Oubre, Collins, Barnes, Vassell, Nurkic, Simons is out. I mean, you guys get the point. There is a ton of people out. So today, it wouldn't be a bad day to take the day off and just enjoy your Friday, watch the NCAA tournament because you're going to be keeping up with the injury news probably until the last game starts with Anthony Davis. Like it's chaotic, it's crazy. So if you don't want that slate, I'd say definitely avoid this slate for tonight. But before that, little quick look at recap of my lineup. I made two lineups. I actually entered into the big 100K to first. This lineup outscored that one by like 3 or 4 points. So just going to show you guys this one. But yeah, one with Garland to get a little bit different here. Bridges, I was on pace to break the slate and the game blew out, or excuse me. And then he just didn't do much in that second half, which is super frustrating. Eric Gordon was trash. Jalen Williams, super popular and just didn't do much. Richards barely missed the double double there, so he would have got 30 plus points. That's kind of annoying. Quickly was obviously great. Mobley was fantastic for me. And this is in this lineup, I actually saw all the Terry Rozier news. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna switch to Dennis Smith Jr. and maybe Rozier gets pulled, and it actually happened, which is crazy. And of course, DSJ starts and just absolutely does nothing. So yeah, that was a little frustrating there. Let's look at the lineup that won in this. Just quickly, Cole Anthony, Kawhi, Mobley, Allen, Grimes, Batum, and J-Val. So moving on to this 10-game slate here. Starting off with Indiana, obviously the big news is Tyrese Halliburton. If he's out, we should see a starting lineup of Turner, Hield, Nemhard, Matherin, and Naismith. I believe that's what they did last time. Or was it Nawara, Naismith? I think it was Nawara, Naismith, Nemhard, Buddy, and Turner. If that's the case here against Boston, a tough matchup. I do like Miles Turner at 6'6". We know he's upside. We just kind of hope this game stays close and that there's no blowout risk. If Halliburton's back, it's pretty much just Halliburton and Turner for me. Buddy Hield is always worth a GPP dart throw. And then, yeah, I guess you could look to Matherin, Naismith, and Nawara in tournament settings, but with like Duarte there, Brissett's there, Jalen Smith's there, they have Jackson there. So they're just going to kind of run these power forwards and small forwards all just anywhere from like 20 to 30 minutes. So no real standouts to me. It's really just kind of dependent on the Halliburton news if he's out. Obviously, I'd like loading up on TJ McConnell, who should see mid 20s minutes, maybe closer to 30, depending on how he's doing, if they need him to be out there. And then I would like, Nemhard to be a decent value, a little bit of a usage bump for guys like Buddy Hield and Turner. And yeah, so that's kind of it. It's kind of what we have to wait on is that Halliburton news. On to Boston. For Boston, Tatum's prices come down to 10-7. I like that. I like Jalen Brown's price as well. They're just two pretty strong secondary options in terms of like the actual secondary options on this team. White, Horford, Smart, Brogdon, Williams. I think my favorite would be Robert Williams. Kind of on a minutes limit. Only saw 21. So if he's off that, I'd love him because he'd probably play close to 30 minutes and he has huge upside. But if he's still on a minutes limit, then no real strong standouts to me of that secondary group. Just really prefer getting into Tatum or Brown. Moving on to the Spurs. The Spurs, as you can see, one of those teams that has literally everyone questionable. I mean, how are you supposed to break this down? I mean, Keldon looks like he's probable. Um, Questionable is Zach Collins. Vassell's questionable. It's like there's no rhyme or reason of who's going to be in or out. So they've just been like taking random people out one game, playing the other ones this game. It just makes no sense. So it looks like right now Johnson and Trey Jones are both good to go. So with that, maybe if Mamu starts as like the center, I do like him. He'd probably be my favorite play there. Branham, he's been starting, hasn't been doing the best, but he still has upside. I know he's been down a little bit, but with Keldon Johnson probably leading the way and Trey Jones there, I'd probably prefer just getting to Trey Jones and Mamu, depending on the starting lineup. But yeah, a ton of weight to wait for, so that's super frustrating. So can't do much about that right now because literally the whole team is questionable. So there's just a million different ways it could go. Moving on to Washington. In this matchup, love Porzingis. He should be a very, very solid spin up play at 9,000 against this Spurs team. Denny looks pretty solid as well. We saw his upside there in the past 2 games. Kind of just a guy who stuffs the stat sheet, so I do like him. Morris is a decent option. I know he's super popular last night, just didn't do much. Yeah, yeah, it's really just Denny and Porzingis who are going to lead this team. Sure, you can land on guys like Morris, Kispert, Gafford. Take those dart throws. I don't advise it. It's just super hard to get down to these guys and trust them. I think there's better like tournament GPP dart throw plays than these guys. But yeah, they're down there. I really just prefer Porzingis and Denny. Moving on to Detroit. Bagley 7,100. Don't love that. I mean, all the price tags have kind of risen on these guys. I think Killian Hayes is still a decent play here. I mean, he's seen huge minutes, has that double double upside with the assists, and if he's hitting his shots, which we know he's super up and down, but I think he'd be my favorite play there alongside James Wiseman, who before last game was seeing close to 30 minutes. So I think those two interest me the most. But actually, let me retract that. Jalen Duren, he's back, coming off a terrible game there. Before that, he was super, super productive. So I like taking a shot on him at 5,100. I think he's a very solid play here in a game that could definitely blow out. You could see that blowout run. So I think he'd be my favorite play there at 5,100. And that's about it. Not a lot of to like there on the Detroit side. Moving on to Toronto. Great matchup for Toronto guys here. Pascal has been very, very solid the past week. So if you want to ride the hot streak there, don't mind that. Van Fleet, we know, has very solid upside. He's been hot as well. So you can definitely ride those two. I think, once again, they're my favorite players to target on the Toronto side. And then once we get into the secondary options like Podol, Barnes, OG, Trent, it really just comes down to who's in, who's out. Barnes and Trent missed the last game. So if they miss again, then I'd really like guys like Boucher and Will Barton, who both started. Boucher was great. Barton was terrible. But if they start again, I think, or excuse me, Barton starts again, I do really like him, even though he's terrible. And Boucher off the bench would look great at 4,500. Now, if one or both of them are back, maybe I just prefer taking a shot on Trent, even though he's super score independent. This game could blow out. But yeah, right now it's really just Siakam, Van Fleet, and a little bit of Trent and Boucher, depending on how the injury news shakes out. Moving on to Houston here. Um, KPJ, Green, Sengun, all look solid. It's just they're priced about right. Uh, and that's really it. KJ Martin, I mentioned him in my last video how I really liked him, and he came out and pretty much had like a career game this year. 31, 6, and 2 blocks. So I think once again, he looks like my favorite there. Kind of score independent, but yeah, at 5,500, I don't mind it. Otherwise, it's just like everyone's priced about right. No real standouts in a decent matchup against Memphis. On the Memphis side, obviously a great matchup. Josh still probably going to come off the bench, see like 20 mid 20s. So that means Jaren Jackson Jr. still looks decent and viable, coming off his best game of the season there. I don't think you get to chase. It's just with Ja back, there's just not a lot to like for me personally. Tillman only saw 19 minutes, so it's just like they're just kind of rotating all these guys around. There's just not a lot of interest unless you want to take a shot on Jaren Jackson Jr. Moving on to Charlotte and Dallas. On the Charlotte side here, Rozier's questionable. He played his first shift 10 minutes, and then they pulled him and said he had a foot injury, which made no sense. Oubre, they pulled him too, so no idea if they're going to play today. I would assume they don't, and they'll probably start at all. Yeah, Mark Williams is questionable. Dennis Smith Jr. is questionable as well. Looks like he got ruled out in that game due to illness. I don't know what's going on, but it looks like tomorrow we could possibly have Bryce McGowan's as the starting point guard alongside PJ, Gordon, Richards, and probably Kai Jones. So there's a lot to like here for Charlotte, depending on the Rozier, Oubre, and Dennis Smith Jr. news. So yeah, it's kind of what we have to wait for. If those guys are out, then we're just going to want to load up on these Charlotte guys like McGowan's, like a Kai Jones. Sure, you can land on like a PJ and Gordon. They're going to shoot a lot. It's just I don't trust this game staying close, so I'd rather get to these cheaper guys. But we'll have to wait. Moving on to Dallas. Dallas news. Obviously, the big news is Kyrie. If he's in, kind of takes both these guys out of interest for me. Now, sure, you can get to them. It's a great matchup, but with Luke and Kyrie both playing alongside each other, their ceilings are kind of capped. So not much to like there for the Dallas side. Moving on to Milwaukee. Milwaukee side, fantastic matchup here, but Utah has pretty much their G League team out there, so there's a ton of blowout risk. Middleton is out, so maybe they'll just start Allen, Connaughton, Drew, Giannis, and Brook. We'll have to wait and see. I don't mind taking a shot on Bobby off the bench there. It could easily get you there in like mid 20s minutes, which is what he's pretty much been doing the whole season. So I think he'd be my favorite play there at 5,600, followed by Giannis, obviously at 11.5. Just hope the game stays close. If it does, he should absolutely smash here against Utah, who are without Laurie, Clarkson, Sexton, and Rudy Gay. So they're going to start Tucker, Kessler, Olenek, Abaji, and probably Fonte, I'd assume, out of that starting lineup. I mean, Tucker looks decent. Same thing with Kessler and same thing with Olenek. If I had to get to someone, it'd probably be Olenek, 6,600. We saw him last game there against Sacramento. Went for 19, 10, and 8. He's another one of those guys who's just kind of not going to go out there and score like 35 unless he's just shooting absolutely insane from three. But he will go out there and stuff the stat sheet. So I do like him. It's just one of those plays where you have to hope this game stays close. Otherwise, they're just going to pull him and put in guys like Damian Jones, Azubuike, kind of these random guys. So right now, I do think you could definitely take a dart throw on Azubuike. If Walker Kessler gets in foul trouble, he's like the direct center backup. So you could definitely look to him. I don't think they've been playing Damian Jones. Yeah, they really haven't. So yeah, you could definitely take a dart throw on Azubuike, especially if this game blows out as well. He could get a little bit more run. So right now, I do kind of like taking a shot on the guys like Fonte and Azubuike. Moving on to the last few games here, Philadelphia. Big news is Embiid and Harden. If one or both of them miss, obviously we're going to load up on Maxey, a Harris, and whoever is the direct center replacement, whether it's Harrell or Reed. I'd prefer Reed just because he's a better point per minute guy. But if everyone's going to flock to Reed and not play Harrell, it just depends on ownership. So I'd play the kind of the lower owned one. If they're split, I prefer just getting to Reed. But they both look great. Now, if one of the stars misses, I'd pick whoever doesn't miss, play him, and probably Maxey as well. You could get to Harris a little bit. It's just dependent on who it is. If it's Embiid out, obviously we're going to look to Reed and Harrell, play one of them, and then play Harden and maybe Maxey. If Harden's out, you're going to want to play Embiid, Maxey, maybe Harris, and then that's probably it. So that's kind of the news there. Moving on to Golden State. These guys are just kind of priced down a little bit here, and a tougher matchup. Obviously, Embiid should absolutely go off against Golden State if he does play. I like Steph here. Not shooting the best, 10 of 23, 9 of 18, 5 of 15. He just hasn't been aggressive in the first quarter. The past 3 games, if you guys have been watching, I think 2 out of 3, he hasn't shot a basket in the first half of the first quarter. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but yeah, I love him here as like a contrarian spin up option. Clay looks decent, and I do like Draymond Green. He had a huge game for me last slate. 25 minutes, 44 fantasy points, was on pace to absolutely nuke the slate, but got in huge foul trouble, so that was frustrating. But those 3 my favorite. Sure, you get to Looney. They're going to need him if Embiid does play, so I don't mind him there at 5,200. He has had some solid upside, and the Kamika's been good past few games, but really right now, going to be just the main 3 guys, followed by Looney. Moving on to Phoenix and Sacramento. Huge game total here. I love Devin Booker. Chris Paul looks solid. You can definitely get to these value guys like Okogie, Biyombo, maybe even a Jock Landale. But right now, it's just going to be the main focus for me will probably just be Devin Booker. But I do have interest in those other guys just because this game's going to be super, super high scoring. According to Vegas, obviously, it could be low scoring, but let's wait and see. Sabonis, Fox, both look great. I do like Fox here as a nice bring back alongside Devin Booker if you're going to play him. Herder questionable, obviously, if he's out. Just more minutes for guys like Murray and Barnes. And then Monk has a shot of, being a solid GPP play off the bench. We'll probably start Kessler, Edwards. Don't want to go there. And then Trey Lyles is viable. Two bad games in a row here for him, but we know he's solid upside. Moving on to Chicago and Portland. For the Chicago side, obviously the big news is DeMar here. If he's out, it's obviously just a big bump for Zach and Vooch. I'd like both of them. Maybe slightly prefer Vooch, but Zach was obviously going to be super, super aggressive. So they both look great as spin ups. In terms of like the rest of the team, I do think Pat Williams would be a solid value play there. I would start probably see mid 20s, close to 30 minutes. But everyone else is kind of priced about right. So there's no real standouts to me besides kind of those main three guys. On the Portland side, obviously the big news is Grant's still out, Simons is out, Nurkic is questionable, Dame's questionable, Little's questionable. So if Dame misses, then we're going to want to look to guys like probably Shaden Sharp who would start. I don't know. They went super weird last time with Archie Dackno. But yeah, hopefully Dame plays. If he does play, I love him at 11K. If Nurk plays, I do think he's a solid play there at 6,500. If he's out, obviously we can look to a guy like Wofford. We can look to a Sharp. We can look to a Reddish. Thibault. All these guys will kind of get thrown into the starting lineup depending on that news there. So it is one of the last games, and if I guarantee we won't get news till probably 10 minutes before. So it could just mess up your whole lineup. So definitely keep that in mind. You might have to play around the fact that those guys might be out. Moving on to OKC versus the Lakers. SGA looks great. Giddy looks great. I still like Jalen Williams a good amount, even though he's coming off a pretty bad game there. Don't want to get to anyone else on the team. On the Lakers side, it's pretty much just Anthony Davis for me, 10-5. Fantastic matchup here. Love him. And then I guess you can get to Reese. He's been fantastic the past like 2 weeks. Free throw merchant, 18, 13, 13. I don't trust that. I just don't love Austin Reeves 7K. That makes no sense. So really right now for the Lakers, it's really just Anthony Davis or D'Lo for me. And that's going to do it for the slate breakdown. There's just too much news to kind of really hone in on a few core plays. So make sure to stay up to date with me on Twitter. Hit that like button. Check out my prize picks video, which will be out after this. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.